Welcome back to another episode of Running the Wasatch 100. I am delighted, extremely delighted to introduce our special guest today. Somebody that I think is a man's man, incredibly attractive, handsome. He emanates manliness. The extremely attractive Mr. Matt Williams. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Hi, everybody.
Matt is a Wasatch vet who has run a sub 30, 28 and change, and more impressively ran a negative split at Wasatch. So this guy knows what he's doing. And Matt, first question right out of the gate. Tell us something that you actually nailed with your Wasatch 100.
Good question, Scott. For me, it's all about pacing. 100 miles is a long day. Wasatch starts with a brutal climb. You're feeling good. You want to push the pace. My saying is lose minutes to save hours. You might get to the top a few minutes later. You'll make up for it at the end of the race. So keeping a good, even pace can help you feel strong throughout the day.
And that probably helped you with your negative split, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was able to run pretty much to the end, passing a lot of people who blew by me at mile 10, 12 on that fast downhill.
So, next question, Matt. What is something you think you failed or you would, looking back on Wasatch, might do differently?
So the biggest pain point, I felt like I had a good day, but I remember coming out of Lambs and climbing up to Bear Ass Pass, started feeling a little queasy. So I took some chews from my pacer, offered me have some kind of chewy, and that just hit my stomach like a rock. And so I ended up having a few minutes throwing up, which I normally hadn't had an issue with. And so there's a couple things that I think I just take note of. One, it's always risky to try something new. So if you're not familiar with something, especially if you're not feeling great already, it can be risky to put something new in your body. Number two is where Lambs Canyon is, you've been through a long, usually hot day. It's a great place to reset, but it's also a place that you generally take in a lot of calories. And so just be aware that that might make you a little queasy, especially as you start to climb again. And just kind of be mindful and listen to your body. Maybe slow down the amount you're taking in or slow down your pace a little bit to kind of work through those extra calories that you took on.
Okay, Matt, next question. Someone that just got into Wasatch, I'd like your advice. What would you tell them?
Well, I would say it's okay to be a little bit scared. It's a hard race. It's something that you really want to prepare well for. So use that fear as motivation to help get you out of bed in the morning, help you get up those climbs. It's a hard race, but it's doable. And if you just put in the miles, get some good quad bangers in there, that'll help you be successful. Don't be afraid of the fear, just kind of embrace it, snuggle it, and let it lead you to a great race at Wasatch.
You know, I'm a big fan of the snuggling.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I endorse that. So the topic for today is drop bags.
Drop bags.
Everybody has a different strategy to drop bags. My strategy is I put one everywhere that I can. I put as much stuff as I can that I think I might need. I'm a little bit paranoid. My feeling is why not? 90% of the stuff I never touch. But there have been races where I have used things that normally I would not even think, like an extra shirt, or I've had a pack break a strap and had an extra pack. Things like that, just I'm over prepared. That's my strategy. So Matt, what is your drop bag strategy?
So just like anything, the more you do this, the more you can refine your own personal strategy. Kind of what you said, I use this when I prepare or order food. I like to say it's better to have too much than not enough. And so let's use that with our drop bags. It doesn't hurt anything to have something out there in case you might need it. Generally speaking, I like to have my night gear and cold gear, if that's an issue, a little sooner than you might think, just in case you're running a little slow. You may have to pack it a little farther, but to me that's a good trade-off. The other thing is, even if I'm running with a crew, I still put my necessities in a drop bag, because you never know. If something happens with a vehicle, something else, they miss you. You just don't want to be completely reliant on your crew. So making sure you have your essentials along the way. Too much is better than not enough. So another thing to think about, Scott, is if you have your own specific nutrition needs or requirements. I've run hundreds, I've also crewed or run aid stations at a lot of races. They have what they get. And so you can't be reliant on the race to provide, if you have a specific gel you like or different nutrition, or you like a specific brand of soda or electrolyte drink. That's what drop bags are for. Use those as a means to get your own personalized nutrition if that's what you need. If you're good with what the race has, that's good too. You also never know what they might run out of. So if there's something that you're truly relying on, be sure to pack that in your drop bag.
Now we're going to talk about specific aid stations. With Wasatch, there's a few things to note that I strategize going in from a drop bag perspective. Bountiful B, which is the first aid station with a drop bag, I always have a handheld water bottle, because from Bountiful B all the way to Lambs Canyon, that's when the heat of the day happens. You're exposed. It's really hot. And also from Sessions to Big Mountain is a very long stretch. So I want to have that extra water bottle so I can have more water. I also drop my headlamp there. And so that's something for me at Bountiful B. At Big Mountain, that's one you might have crew for the first time there, and you're in the heat of the day. So anything that you might need from a heat perspective, having that drop bag. You might want an extra shirt. You might want, a lighter shirt, sunscreen, because right there you're going to be getting baked. So I also make sure I have an electrolyte drink there, because I believe most people come in to Big Mountain dehydrated. And then Lambs Canyon, a lot of people are going to need their night gear there. You're going to need a headlamp if you're on the slower end. You're going to need probably a long sleeve or some warmer clothing. Some people that are faster, they can throw that in their big water aid or drop bag. So big water, upper big water, it's like a sink up there. It's frigid.
It's freezing.
There's a couple things to note. Number one, you're going to get there, you're going to be probably kind of hotter because you're working, but as soon as you sit down at that aid station, you're going to get instantly cold. And so you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I got to throw on every piece of gear that I need. I have had this happen a lot where I leave and I've got too much on. That said, sometimes it can be very cold from Big Water to Brighton. So you want to have some layers, things that you can carry, but also throw on. And that you're definitely going to want to have some clothing options there. But keep in mind, it's a sink, it's cold, and when you leave, within about 10, 15 minutes, it's going to warm up just a little bit, but it'll still be cold. Matt, what some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. It's a bit of a yo-yo, because early on you want to prepare for the heat, unless the weather is different than it usually is, that's going to be real hot pretty much straight ahead, pretty much between the B to Lambs, really. And then in those canyons, it's going to get real cold. So make sure you've got layers with you. I like to use shivering as a motivation to get out. That usually is my body saying it's time to start moving again. But do make sure that you take those layers with you. That stretch from Big Mountain to, Big Water to Brighton is fairly remote. And so you want to just make sure you have everything you need to get through the cool night. So one thing about those sections, Scott, you mentioned picking up an extra water bottle. One of the things I like to use that extra bit for, whether it's a bottle or hydration pack, is a lot of these aid stations have ice, and you really want to take advantage of that, because anything you can do to keep your temp down is going to help you. Yeah. So whether that's getting some white arm sleeves, keeping those nice and wet, be sure to have a hat, any amount of sun protection and heat mitigation you can have is going to really help, because again, once you get up to that cold area, if you've gotten too hot, once you get that cold, it's going to throw your body just into complete whack. It's not going to be able to regulate very well. Whereas if you can try and keep those temps under control, that'll really help as you go into the nighttime cold temperatures. And I'll say the same thing about Big Mountain as I said about the first climb. Lose minutes to save hours. Big Mountain's a great spot. It's right around the 50K mark, so you're starting to feel really tired. You're hot, you're about to go into the hottest section. It's okay if you take 1 or 2 minutes extra here. Get yourself cooled down, get yourself hydrated, and get ready for that next section, kind of to Lambs. If you can hit that section without getting too overheated, that'll really set up your second half for a really good race.
Once you get to Brighton, I usually like to have a bigger drop bag at Brighton because at that point, you've got about a 50K left. You're going through the night. Really, you'll know where you're at in terms of how you're feeling. For example, I usually put poles in my Brighton drop bag. Most of the time I don't use them, but there have been Wasatches where I had, like, my feet were killing me, or my knees or something, and I wanted to take the pressure off, and I put poles in and used them. I also put different layers, because what you put at Big Water, you may want to change that. So I usually have multiple layer options that I put in my Brighton drop bag, and that's really a place where you want to have almost something, everything that you can think of that you may want to change during a race, because by that point you'll know where you're at and what may be feeling good, and also there may be just something you want to change out with your clothing or your gear. So Matt, what about you from Brighton?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I look at Brighton as kind of like the last gear up to the finish. You do have other options, but that's really the best one. So just like you said, I had, I think, a change of shoes. I didn't use it. My feet were fine, but I had it there just in case. I think I changed my shirt. It's always nice to just get out of that sweaty gear if you can. That's another one. Took a few extra minutes, hydrate, eat. And then there is pretty solid climb out of Brighton. And then, you know, the drop down into Ant Knolls, I think it's overlooked sometimes. And it's a hard, steep, rocky downhill.
It's the worst. The worst.
Just like you said, if you're thinking I need poles, or maybe I need a little extra protection underfoot, Brighton's a great place to really gear up for the home stretch.
So after Brighton, you're gonna have a drop bag possibility at Pole Line Pass, and then also at Staten. So some of the things to think about there, and it's going to depend on how fast you're going and what your time is, but for me, my typical Wasatch finishes the last 5 times have been, 27 to 30 hours. So at Pole Line, I usually have extra layers just in case I don't like what I picked at Brighton.
It can be cold at pole line.
Yes. And then at Staten, I usually have, you know, more like short sleeve. I'll have a change of clothes because usually it's going to start getting hotter once you get down on the Deer Creek Trail. So if you're later in the race, you might want your you know, cooler clothing to be even prior to that. Some might even want it at Brighton or at Pole Line Pass, because it's going to get really hot. If you're going to finish from, you know, 31 to 36 hours, that Deer Creek Trail is incredibly hot, and you want to be prepared for that in your later drop bags.
The weather, you know, keep in mind that first of all, you're in the mountains, and where it might be nice in the valley, you might be getting thunderstorms, wind, rain. So first of all, always be prepared for whatever the weather brings. Secondly is, you never know how your body's gonna react. You may feel super good in t-shirt and shorts all night, one race, and then another race, you gotta have a puffy and long pants on. Or as I've seen, you'll see people in the same race going through very different responses to temperature and weather. So just making sure that you understand where you're at, you understand where the weather is, and then just be prepared for any of those eventualities.
Just wrapping this up, I'm sure that most of you have become a little bit more attracted to Matt through the video. I have. So just a good looking guy. Anyway, a few things to wrap up. One of the things with Wasatch that's unique is how much descent, and the trails are so shizzy.
It's rough.
They're shizzy.
It's a rugged track.
And the first two Wasatches I ran, I destroyed my feet, my toes, because how much descent, and you almost can't simulate it in your training. So I always use a half size extra in my shoes, but the point I'm trying to make here, I always have extra shoes in my drop bag, because even shoes that I've worn all through my training cycle that were amazing, I get to Wasatch, and sometimes because of the terrain, I want to change them, especially like at Brighton and sometimes at Big Mountain or Lambs. Matt?
You know what the old timers say?
What do they say?
Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Scott, there's one thing we can't miss when we're talking about drop bags. That's lube.
I'm gonna have to agree there. You never want to be underprepared when it comes to lube.
Put it in all your drop bags, put it in every pack you got, every pair of shorts. If there's one thing that hurts more than anything at the end of 100, that's the tiniest thing, it's chafing. So keep that at the ready.
A quick story.
Tell it.
When Matt and I ran Wasatch together in 2014, we actually ran every step together. Matt had a piece of lube from his glide stick get stuck in his bum crack.
I forgot about that.
And the piece of glide fell out of his bum crack.
Miles later. And my pacer picked it up and was like, "What is this?" And was like,
"Oh!"
Laughs were shared.
Yeah, good times. Bring lots of lube.